in order to be able to become sober, I really had to look inward and see and realize the opportunities for growth that I had. At the same time, be able to communicate my emotions and be able to share, feel comfortable about sharing.
Hello and welcome to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. This is the show where I speak with the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am really delighted to be welcoming Cesar Wurm to the podcast. Cesar is the VP of Commercial and Premium Brands, and he provides strategic direction, oversight, leadership across all of the premium hotels at IHG Hotels and Resorts in the United States. He's got an incredible background. I've had the fortunate opportunity to meet the very lovely Cesar in person, and outside of his work time, I know he's a big F1 fan and he's very passionate indeed about supporting others when it comes to addiction and recovery. He has an extensive background educationally, but also serves on various different boards. He's been recognised by various who's who diversity and inclusion lists, and I am delighted to welcome him to the show today. Welcome, Cesar.
Thank you, Leila. Very, very happy to be here, and thank you for the kind introduction. Actually, I'm gonna save that and show that to my wife and daughter. So it sounds way better than probably how I feel. But yeah, thanks. It's an honor to be here, and it was a pleasure meeting you in New York a few months back, and and thank you for all the great work you do. It's really impressive what you and the team have accomplished over the last 3+ years, and really, making very important work with major corporations across the globe. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is literally all mine, Cesar. So tell us, and those who perhaps don't know you as well as I, a little bit about how you came to be where you are today. You thanked me for the kind intro, but frankly, I could have talked for 20 minutes about all of the things you've done. So perhaps take us back to the beginning and where you started and how you ended up in this role and getting so involved in various different causes, including, obviously sitting on our DAR Global Diversity Review Council, which we're very grateful for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting journey. As I look back through my life and how I progressed as a person, as a professional, it's interesting. I don't know if you feel the same way, but when I look in reflection, there's a lot of crucial aspects that happens in life that you're not sure it's going to lead to anything. Like a lot of these experiences are not pleasant ones, right? But you learn and you grow and you evolve a lot. And then eventually you start meeting people and you start finding those connections along the way that eventually start connecting the dots, which I'm very grateful for. So, taking back a little bit, one aspect that really influenced me a lot. I was losing my mom at 12. It was very unexpected. She went just for what should have been a fairly standard procedure, catheterization, from the heart, but she had a complication and, unfortunately couldn't do anything and hit it immediately. So as you can imagine, that was a shock. Right. I mean, I was super close to her. At that age, you're still forming as a person, evolving. You're just hitting your, your development years. And, so it was a very hard time for us. But at the same time, it made me grow, right? In some aspects, much faster, in a much more agile way, because you have to adapt and figure out and deal with things that you wouldn't have to deal otherwise. So that has really made connections and engaging with people a very important aspect, because as we're talking just a little bit earlier before we start taping, life's short, right? And you never know. And so I think that cherishing and valuing connections, valuing people, and appreciating what each person brings to the table, no matter, right, what their background is or their educational level, we can all learn from each other. And that's something that really held true as I began in the hospitality career, because I wasn't a great student, so I couldn't be a lawyer or a doctor, but I started working in Brazil as a room service waiter, and then I said, "Wow, this is a kind of fun." Experience. You engage a lot of people, you deal with different type of people. So I got an opportunity to study hotel school and began my professional career in hospitality, and been here in the US for 22 years. Somewhat unexpected, right? I came here for internship and I thought it would be a 1-year deal, but 22 years later, I'm here, and happy to be here. But yeah, that has really played a very important factor in my life, and then I was very fortunate to have great leaders, great team members that really helped me to realize what's important, how to focus on production and performance while being kind, and ensure that we don't lose that humane aspect of people that really helps each other be at their best. Yeah, so that is really kind of the journey. And then over the last few years, the DE&I space became very dear and near to my heart. I got an opportunity to sit at the board here at IHG, in the Americas board. So we do very important work and support the company to have a better culture, and really allow the opportunity for everyone to grow and have great opportunities. And then it brought me to different circles, and that's how I met you. And so yeah, it's interesting how there was not like a linear path, but the zigzag that eventually took me to where I am today.
Thank you so much for sharing, Cesar. And also, it's really pertinent where you talk about the path in life not being so linear, and clearly you can see the impact, the profound impact that it had on you losing your mum at the tender age of 12. Do you think that that was a big driver for who you are now? And ultimately the work you're getting involved in, it's so purposeful, it's so meaningful, and allowing the different mindsets to be welcome at the table, whether it's the boardroom table, the family table, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. But do you think that that has been a big driving factor for you?
Yes, I think so. I believe was really a time where it kind of started to shape me, and for many years wasn't a positive things, right? I start rebelling as a teenager. I start drinking at a very early age, and I was partying, going to clubs at 14. And then that lifestyle evolved, and so I had an addiction problem for many years, which thankfully now been able to be sober for 8 years plus. And so it's interesting, right? It was a very painful experience. It had a quite a bit of a time where it wasn't necessarily, I think it brought some aspects where it became positive and kind of allow me to relate better to people, allow me to have a certain perspective in life. But also I suppressed a lot of those emotions and didn't share and that eventually, right, it led to very harmful behaviors and way of life. So it's interesting to your point where um, once I realized, hey, I can't keep up my life as it is, right? Otherwise, I'm gonna lose my family. I'm gonna eventually become homeless and certainly die at one point. So when I decided that, hey, I need help, I need to change how I'm doing now, and that has also became a very positive, and I think really the start of a lot of personal growth, a lot of professional growth, because in order to be able to become sober, I really had to look inward and see and realize the opportunities for growth that I had. At the same time, be able to start to be able to communicate my emotions and be able to share, feel comfortable about sharing, and find ways to cope with the pain, with the anger in positive ways versus just, numbing the pain, finding ways to numb the pain. So, yeah, so that led to a lot of learning, a lot of reading, and a lot of growth to start be able to speak more freely and it's interesting even as I was sober for about 6+ years, I wasn't that comfortable talking openly about it, right? There's certainly a close circle that knew, but just the more I began to open up, the more positive responses I got, where people, hey, I'm going through the same, or my son, my wife, my partner, you name it. And then you start realizing, wow, right? Even if someone may have whatever medical issue or something else that could relate and be able to help them in some way. So that's when I start become to open up a little bit. And I think, yes, to some degree it has a lot of impact, even if indirectly, in my personal life and work. So I'm not sure if I actually answered the question, but
You did answer the question, and you answered it in such a genuine way. I personally appreciate the detail that you went into, and also how you talk about the discomfort with speaking about these things.
mm,
Um, there's a book that I'm reading at the moment, and one of my favorite authors we'd mentioned before we started talking about stoicism. I actually have it here through
uh,
pure coincidence. But it's called The Obstacle is the Way.
okay,
And what you've described there, going through this journey of hardship, going through the trauma, coming out the other side, it is so inspirational, because addiction can affect anyone in many different guises. Honestly, there's times why I get to the end of the day and think, oh my goodness, I'm absolutely desperate for a drink. And I'm sure that the people who are listening in to this podcast, be them execs, be it people starting out in their career, be it people going through, grieving the loss of a parent. It's happened
yeah,
to me recently, and it changes you as a person. It absolutely changes you, without sounding too morbid on the podcast, because this is a really inspirational story of success and actually coming out
yeah,
the other side. But they say you lose a part of your childhood when you lose a parent, and I think how you articulated yourself there, it was very much that trauma and turning that adversity then into an experience with which
yeah,
you learn from, you gain that resilience, and actually realize the only person that is going to solve this is me. And
yeah,
look where you are right now, and creating that safe space for others around you.
yeah.
Like you say, it's like a snowball effect, people opening up and saying, and I've just done it now, oh my goodness, there's been times when stress, anxiety hits you, and you think, goodness, you just want to reach for a drink. And
Yeah,
there's the tipping point for that, when it becomes something that is a problem versus something that is a casual drink.
yeah, 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 and I think you're hitting something very important, and another reason why, uh, if I'm very purposeful about sharing whenever is appropriate or opportunities like this, is because as humans, especially nowadays with social media or whatever else, we're so much more connected, and you have so much insight into other people's lives, or at least what is portrayed. That is, it's hard, right? Sometimes you look at people and they are very successful, or appear to be successful, appear to be happy, and they have everything. But I think it's important to share that, hey, yes, it's not an easy journey, right? And there's always, people have stuff going on in their lives. And yes, they may have, great things in their lives, and hopefully everyone does, right? Hopefully everyone is happy and can achieve success and have the best possible. But also I think it's important to recognize that everyone goes through some things. Everyone has adversity, obstacles, and it's important to acknowledge. So when people are going through that, they don't feel like they're alone. They don't feel like, wow, this is just me. So hopefully they can, find some peace in that aspect, and find someone to share whatever they're going through, and find inspiration to, hey, I can overcome this, or can find a way to see the light at the end as well.
Indeed. And when you talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, and you also talk about the fact that we have many things going on below the surface, you're a father, you're a husband, you're a leader, you're a boss, you're a colleague. The list starts to go on, and it would be really easy to judge that book by its cover.
Yeah.
Obviously we met in person, and I hope your wife doesn't mind me saying this, but you're very, you're a handsome guy, you're in a senior role. It would be super easy to think that actually you had that made, or perhaps that was something handed to you on a plate. And so important that we look below the surface. And when it comes to what diversity means, and we had
Mhm.
this conversation over the dinner table, which I just loved, is diversity, it means different things to different people.
Yeah.
And in particular when it comes to mental health, and for guys actually as well, there's a far greater even suicide rate and the likes with men. And I work for, there's a charity in the UK called the Samaritans. I'm not sure what they have them in the States, but the amount of guys that you would get calling up because of the whole taboo piece of men in particular talking about their vulnerabilities. I was talking to my counsellor about this a little while back, and she said it has really rocketed the amount of men who are now coming to see me. And I thought, that's fascinating, because we're
Yeah.
starting to talk about this more. The
Yes.
archetypal male was very, I tease my husband about this, is, big boys don't cry. He
Yeah.
comes from North America, and that's what you grow up with, really, until there is, leaders who have made it to the top and are willing to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability, it's a huge superpower, and the ripple effect it can have is really quite tremendous.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you brought it up, because it's a problem, and thankfully, to your point, it's improving. But I've personally known someone who committed suicide a few months ago. Someone my age, and with family. And to your point, is like, it's so sad when someone is in that state that they don't see any other option. And to your point, I think if we normalize that, hey, it's okay that you don't feel 100%, or it's okay to not feel great all the time. And there is so many ways, right? We can discuss, and we can open up. There's professionals you can talk to. There are things, meditation, whatever works for those people. But I think just talking about it, and sharing experiences to normalize, so don't feel that, hey, you have to be ashamed to say, I need help. And there is a way. And it's interesting, as you were talking earlier, I had no idea when I first began my journey to sobriety, that I was kind of starting to learn about diversity. Because as I start to explore, hey, I got to find ways to get sober and sustain. I went to, groups where we share and you talk and you share your experiences. And also interesting to your point that I really began to realize at that point that the differences between people that seem so different from the surface, it's so minimal, right? From, making one wrong choice, or, you know, not choosing to do something, or, you had very people that were very successful and they lost everything. So it's easy to look at someone and judge, right? Either for the good or the bad based on what you perceive, his or her life to be. But it's so interesting to see that, people go through experiences, and the difference between being on the top or the bottom, it can be so minimal, one little thing in your life. And so I think it's, that was a great learning for me, to be empathetic and be kind to people, because yeah, it was really enlightening to me.
It's so profound when you're talking about these things, and it makes me think of a film. It's quite an old film now, but it had Gwyneth Paltrow in it, and it was called Sliding Doors. I don't know if
Mm.
you ever saw it, but basically, she there's one scenario in the film where she misses the train. So she's in London, the tube, she misses a train literally by a hair. And there's
Uh,
another where she just about makes the tube, and you don't know whether it was the first instance or the second instance, and it tells both the stories and what happens. But
uh,
it is such a good classic film. And when you were telling that story, it reminded me of that film, because one little thing, one person that you meet, one experience that you have, it's
yeah.
the ripple effect of various other things that then can happen. And it starts to make you think, well, what is success? What is life all about? The last couple of months I've been thinking, and I really lost a lot of my motivation, actually, as you kind of think, right, lost a parent, and where
Mhm.
is the drive? And you can see how you can easily fall into that hole and not come back out of it again if you're not surrounded by brilliant people, your wife, your daughter, my husband, my
Yeah.
son, my
Yeah.
mum, my brother. But reminding ourselves constantly of all of the stuff that we have to be grateful for, I just think is absolutely critical. And clearly, some of the things that you've achieved, I think are tremendous. But I would be really interested to know what success now means to you, and also a little bit about the
Uh,
impact that you're having on the various boards, because without the executive sponsorship when it comes to all of these different profound subjects in the world of inclusivity, we have to have people that they believe it and they're willing to champion it like you are.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, what success. I think that's another one that certainly evolved over time. If you had asked me that a few years back, I think it would be that rat race mentality, where it's like, hey, have a good title, make good money, and certainly that's important, right? We want to have a good living and be able to have financial stability. I think that's great. But now when I look, it's really more holistic. It's more about having harmony in life, having a good place from a personal level with, my family, the people I love, be healthy, mentally and also physically, and certainly as well, from a work perspective, of course, deliver a good job, good performance, and be a good inspiration. I mean, I'm just about to turn 44, so you still have many years ahead, hopefully, and be able to still do a lot professionally. But also, I came to a point where I want to help as many people as possible. And so, from a professional side, just help mentoring, help facilitating introductions, anything you can do to hopefully pay it forward. And to your point, the same way that people gave me opportunities, believed in me. I want to make sure that I do the same, and it's very rewarding when you see that, and gives a big sense of success. I don't know. I mean, has it evolved as well to you over time, or has been kind of status quo your take on success?
Oh, I love it. You're like interviewing me now, Cesar. Thank
Ah,
you for that. Has success evolved for me over time? I think, yeah, absolutely. I think absolutely. I think you do, to your point, you have some of those consistents where actually you realize, um, it's great to have stability when it comes to financials, in particular. For me, having had baby Peter, who's now 15 months old, you realize, hang on a moment, this is not just about how hard can I run at this. I did
yeah,
it 2 years of business, didn't pay myself a salary. And, because I believed in the mission of everything we were doing. And so I think there are some of the practical sides of success and what that means. And of course, I guess the classic achievement roles, etc. But when it really comes down to it, and when you lose someone that you love so very much, that
mm,
you have looked up to all of your life, and frankly, I feel I'm still in denial about a lot of it. I haven't quite adjusted it. I'm seeing him, talking to him all of the time.
yeah,
But it's yeah, memento mori. My new favorite expression is you could die tomorrow. And so actually, what are you going
yeah,
to remember when you're on your deathbed? Without
yeah,
being too philosophical, actually, it's no, it's your loved ones, it's your family, and having some sense of a deeper connection of purpose. And when you lose those connections, can't remember the name of the book now, but Lost Connections by Johann, I'm afraid I can't remember his last name, but I was reading, about this, and losing those connections at times in life have been the really difficult places where I think I've struggled. And so reconnecting with loved ones, realizing that if I'd have just sent that one email is not going to be something that I'm worrying about
yeah,
when I'm on my deathbed. Uh, so
yeah.
success,
So true.
success is love for me.
Yeah, there you go. That's beautiful. Yeah, success is love. That's great. Yeah, yeah. Huh.
I feel like we should be meditating right now, Caesar.
Yeah,
I've gone into another zone, because when we first started speaking, we both came onto the call and we're like, oh, so busy, so much stuff to be going on with work, the juggle, etc.
yeah.
But it was like the book by Daniel Coleman, I think, Thinking Fast
Ah,
and Thinking Slow, and
yeah.
actually having those moments where you are reconnecting. And these are the things I love. I
Yeah,
love reconnecting with people that I admire and slowing down for a moment,
yeah,
because in the modern day world, we just don't have enough time to think, let alone do. My
yeah,
counselor said to me once, be a person being, not doing. You are a human being, not a human doing. And I kind of really like that.
yeah, yeah. That's it. And yeah, that's a great call out, right? Because I mean, it's so easy to get caught up on. There's so much things we can do in a day, and you can, keep working right until whenever. And sometimes it's good, to your point, just make sure that you're recharging, that you're taking care of yourself, that you take time to appreciate, and that allows you to be more productive and healthier for sure. That's a great point.
So before we wrap up, Caesar, I'd love to ask you a couple of lightning round questions, if I may.
Sure.
I've obviously asked you about what success means to you, but what does diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, culture mean to you? Because you do have a fascinating cultural background as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think in a simple way, I just think, generally speaking, kind of embracing others, acceptance. Because to your point earlier, diversity means it can be so different, so many people. But I think, whenever you think about, different socioeconomics, race, backgrounds, experiences, I think just having that, being able to, accept others for who they are. And I'm a big believer that how I come from and try to do that is really with the assumption that people are good. People want to do what's right. And, sometimes it's hard to understand when others don't have the same view as you do, but also to our discussion, right? The experiences in your life shape who you are. So they may have gone through something that, wired and help them frame to whatever or whomever they are. And so to me, yeah, that's what it means. And I think the more acceptance, the more openness we have, that's going to lead to better understanding and allow more inclusion, more equity to happen. So yeah, that's my take.
And finally, if you could talk to your 12-year-old self, what might you say?
Yeah, be kind to yourself, and don't take things too seriously. Just enjoy and do your best. Yeah.
Cesar, it's been an absolute joy having you on the show. Particularly, my favourite comment was that last one that you just said, because it reminds me of what my dad would say: as long as you try your best, darling, nothing else matters, ultimately.
Yeah.
None of us are perfect. We're all fallible. And, a whole number of things that I've learned from this podcast, and I hope others take away as well, are, the power of vulnerability, the power of humanity, simple things like kindness when you do not know what someone might be going through, trying our very best not to judge a book by its cover, because we could look at social media, we could look at people that we think have got it all, and actually, what is having it all? It's
Yeah. Wow.
love, it's family, and your path to recovery, your path through your personal life and your career, I think are truly, an inspiration for many. And really, it's in the absence of role models, understanding real models who have been there, done that, like yourself, are absolutely critical if we're going to build a better future for our other new generations of leaders coming through.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure hope so. That's awesome. Thank you. It was an honor and really enjoyed the chat.
Cesar, thank you. My name is Layla Mackenzie Dellis, founder and CEO of Dark Global. You've been listening to the wonderful Cesar Wurm of IHG. If you've been affected by any of the subjects that we've covered today in the podcast, please make sure you do reach out and get help, or reach out to one of the team, or myself, or even Cesar himself. Do visit us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast. Subscribe. Do give us a little like and a review if you'd be so kind. And you can find that podcast at www.darglobal.org/podcast. See you again very soon.